Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and welcome to part 4 of our New Year's Eve Lesser Known Lost Media Marathon. This part will be covering episodes 16 through 20. Let's get to it. At number 1, we have Wolf Rock TV, a partially found ABC Deke animated series from 1984. So, Wolf Rock TV was an animated series produced by Dick Clark and originally broadcast in 1984 on ABC, with 13 episodes produced and 7 episodes aired. It starred famed radio DJ Wolfman Jack, real name Robert Weston Smith, as a fictionalized cartoon version of himself. So the show featured animated segments as well as live action music video and interviews with musicians. And it also starred Wolfman Jack alongside 3 teenagers, Sarah, Sunny, and Ricardo, and their pet parrot named Bopper, who was likely the comic relief. They also featured a manager named Mr. Morris, who apparently didn't like the rock music that Wolfman Jack showcases. It was re-aired in 1989 alongside a fellow music-themed animated series, Kid Video, but it was known as the Wolf Rock Power Hour. Now, while neither one of these series ever received official home media releases, likely due to how expensive it would have been to license all of the music and music videos. But Kid video episodes do survive on unlicensed VHS recordings, while there are no known viewable copies of full Wolf Rock TV episodes. In fact, outside of some rare merchandise, animation cells, and a few promo reels, the only one of which even features anyone in the show's actual voice, you get to hear Wolfman Jack voice his character, we really don't have anything on this show. So if you think you have an old VHS copy of this show somewhere in your attic, fish it out. We'd love to see it. Coming in at number 2, we've got Beanball Benny, a lost build of a canceled Sega Genesis beat-em-up game from 1991. So Beanball Benny was developed by Microsmiths and set to be published by New Vision Entertainment for the Sega Genesis. It was canceled due to New Vision closing its doors, which meant that the game was canceled along with the other 2 titles they worked on, The Swamp Thing and Guardian Angel Safety Patrol. But in March of 2010, BMPE Drums from the Digital Press Forum found a prototype of the game, shared some screenshots, and uploaded a video to YouTube. Little else is known about the title, though it was shown at a summer 1991 CES event, and it was also advertised that year. But, they have not dumped the prototype. But from the video, we can see that there are both driving and walking segments, and also from the ad, we can take that this guy, Beanball Benny, has to save Zunieville, and tries to capture Ramon and his fumbling gang of crooks. Armed only with his trusty trick taxi and bazooka-like pitching arm, Benny uses his deadly beanball to KO the crooks. And I wish this game had gotten made. I had a Sega Genesis back in the day, a game where you drive around in a taxi and also run around on the streets throwing baseballs at crooks. Sounds like a pretty fun game. I definitely think that if the rights can still be bought, if any materials still exist, I think there needs to be game companies that go around buying up to the rights to these old canceled projects in video games and coming out with new modern video games based on the ideas. I think that could be a pretty fun, pretty fun kind of like the old Castle films. Dark Castle films who would remake William Castle's old movies. I think there could be something fun with this, but sadly I have neither the capital nor the programming knowledge to be able to do that. So, but hey, free idea for anyone who wants it. Coming in at number 3, we have one that I don't know if it fully fits my guidelines, but while it's definitely not lesser known at this point, it's definitely lesser talked about because people aren't yet considering it necessarily a piece of lost media, but ultimately it very much is. And that is, of course, the 2022 Batgirl movie, the lost HBO Max superhero film. So we were all looking forward to this film. It was going to be about the origin stories of Barbara Gordon / Batgirl, played by Leslie Grace. It was going to star J.K. Simmons as her dad, James Gordon. It was going to have Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne / Batman, the second best Batman of all time, the best one, of course, being the Kevin Conroy animated Batman. And it was even going to also feature Brendan Fraser as the villain, Firefly. Now, while I don't really know anything about Leslie Grace, I'm sure she would have done a great job. The inclusion of J.K. Simmons, Michael Keaton, and Brendan Fraser alone make me desperately want to see this film. Unfortunately, after Warner Brother merged with Discovery to become Warner Brothers Discovery, it was announced that they had canceled the release of the film on HBO Max or theatrically, despite its planned release in 2022, making it effectively dead. It was stated that, it simply didn't work and went against the new desire and mandate from CEO David Zaslav to make DC Films big theatrical event films, and that watchers of the initial test screenings said it looked cheaper than other films, this probably being due to the fact that they hadn't put in all the effects yet. It wasn't done, but they wouldn't let them. The directors tried to recover some of the footage on their cell phones, but it just didn't work out. And I think this is an important piece to include, because it shows us that something can become lost media instantly. It's not that it's like, it was a long time ago, it faded into obscurity. This just happened, and this is lost to us. And I think, people demanded the Snyder Cut for so long. Demand the whatever cut is still here. Demand that they finish Batgirl. I mean, they want these films to be big theatrical events. Well, from what I hear, that's what they tried to do with Blue Beetle, and it sucked. So, it sounds like this film had a lot of raw acting talent in it, and I'm sure it would have been very enjoyable. So, let's make our voices known. Let's keep Batgirl from staying lost. Let's make this found media. Call to action, people. Coming in at number 4, we have the Charlie Horse Music Pizza, a partially lost PBS Kids Lamb Chops play-along spin-off series from 1998 to 1999. So do any of you remember Lamb Chops play-along? I certainly grew up on it. My mom grew up on it. I think it started all the way back in the 50s. Well, this was a spin-off to it. The Charlie Horse Music Pizza was a spin-off of Lamb Chops play-along that premiered on PBS Kids in 1998. The show tells the story of a seaside pizzeria run by Sherry Lewis and her puppet friends Charlie Horse, Lamb Chop, and Hush Puppy, alongside some new characters that were created for the show. The show emphasized music education, and each episode taught a specific lesson about music. The show was canceled in the fall of 1998 after Sherry Lewis died of complications from ovarian cancer, which was really sad. She was only 65 at the time. The show is extremely hard to find on the internet. Of the 23 episodes made of the show, only 13 exist in full, and ones exist only partially. Other than these episodes, no other episodes exist on the internet. Wikipedia does claim that the Sony Wonder released VHS tapes of the show, but there is no evidence of these tapes that can be found online, meaning that this claim could be false. Oh boy, a false claim on Wikipedia. I am shocked. But on July 7th of 2018, Lost Media Wiki user Peter uploaded 10 complete episodes of the show on Archive and MySpleen. I just think that it's interesting that this show was archived so poorly. I mean, Sherry Lewis, very famous, along with her 3 characters from Lamb Chop's Play Along, which is a show that, to my understanding, is very well documented, and that this show only stopped because Sherry Lewis herself died, not because it was unpopular, leading me to believe that it should have been much better. There should have been a lot more efforts to save the material than there seemed to have been. So again, if you have a VHS tape of this show, be sure to upload it online. We'd all love to see it. At number 5, we have Leslie Van Houten's Sexual Letter Correspondence, lost letter communication between Manson family member and an unknown double murderer pre-2016. Leslie Van Houten is a convicted murderer most famous for being a member of the Manson family. On the 10th of August 1969, she participated in the murders of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, which resulted in her and several other family members being convicted and sentenced to death on the 29th of March of 1971, which was later reduced to a life sentence. Van Houten was incarcerated at the California Institute of Women for 53 years, with over 20 attempts for parole being denied over the years. During her time incarcerated, Van Houten was known to have been in a 15-year sexual letter relationship with an unknown double murderer. So basically, she was part of the cult run by super creepoid Charles Manson, and, he was the one who commanded his followers to commit the murders of Sharon Tate, and then later the LaBiancas, and Leslie Van Houten was one of the people involved and convicted of those crimes. Originally, she was sentenced to death, and then that was commuted to life without parole when California abolished the death penalty. She was retried and was then given a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 7 years after the retrial. Now, during her incarceration, Van Houten was repeatedly recommended for parole, but her requests were repeatedly denied or overruled by the governor of California until her release in 2023, this year. In April of 2016, the California Parole Board recommended Van Houten's parole request be granted, but during the parole hearing, Sharon Tate's sister, Deborah, stated she believed Van Houten had not reformed since her time in the Manson family and still had a proclivity for evil men. She used Van Houten's prison records to claim that the murderer was allowed to have a 15-year sexual letter relationship with another double homicide individual in another state. The identity of this double murderer is unknown, but it is also unknown if this information was what caused the governor at the time, Jerry Brown, to deny the parole request, with Judge William Ryan upholding this ruling in October of 2016, with both of these men deeming Van Houten was still a threat to society. Now, as to the availability of these supposed letters, the letters the unidentified double murderer sent to Van Houten most likely remain in her possession, and again, she is now a free woman. Now, because of their personal nature, it is unlikely that Van Houten will ever publicly release them, and meanwhile, the location and fate of the letters Van Houten wrote to the unidentified individual remains unknown. All that we supposedly do know is that the letters were sexual in nature, and that the double murderer had apparently died sometime prior to the 2016 parole hearing. While I do think that at some point, either one, if Van Houten needs money and therefore will possibly sell her letters, I don't think we'll ever find the letters she sent, as they've probably been discarded whenever this convicted double murderer, died. I just find this one interesting because not only was apparently Ms. Van Houten the object of a hybrustophiliac, that being someone who is attracted to serial killers. Again, I'm not really going into any of the details of her case. Many YouTubers have already done that far better than I could ever do, but it seems she herself, not only being a murderer, also was potentially a hybrustophiliac. I don't know if the murderer she was supposedly talking to counts, as it was only 2. I do believe you need 3 to be a serial killer, but I do think it is interesting that 2 evil people such as this could be attracted to one another, and it worries me what kind of, if evil finds evil, what that could release. And again, she's out amongst the public now. She's not even that old. She's like 74, so certainly not some kindly old lady. Personally, in my opinion, allegedly don't think she's probably all that reformed. I certainly wouldn't want to be alone in a room with her. Alright, so it was really cool to actually have an update, but coming in at number 1, we have the Book of the Wars of the Lord, lost non-canonical biblical book, date unknown. There's been a few times where I've talked about a piece of lost media that is potentially like the oldest one I've talked about. This one, if it's actually a lost non-canonical book of the Bible, this might undoubtedly be the oldest piece of lost media I will ever talk about. So the Book of the Wars of the Lord, also referred to as the Book of Yahweh's Battles, is a book mentioned in the Pentateuch. I don't even know how, Pentateuch? I'm not even going to try that one, I'll put it up on the screen. But that in the book of in the book of Numbers, chapter 21, verse 14. It is one of several non-canonical books referenced in the Bible and the Torah that have become lost to time. Its brief mention and the manner in which it is mentioned has led to a theological debate among scholars that have continued for nearly a millennium, including when it was authored who authored it, what it contained, and whether or not it existed at all. It is widely agreed that this mention in the Book of Numbers is to attest to a statement mentioned in the prior verse that it was a quote from this book. So basically, the book is mentioned more or less as a citation for a previous quote going, oh yeah, it said that in the book of Yahweh's battles, to put it in, simple terms. The problems with confirming this is the fact that the Bible has been translated so many times in so many ways that a lot of the original text and its meaning get kind of muddled. But so basically there's a brief mention of this book. Nobody really knows exactly what its contents was, if it was maybe a different book referenced elsewhere, when it was written, what it was about. Essentially, there is thought to be a lost book of the Bible, and there are actually several lost books of the Bible, but this one, its existence is not totally known, and it's been the source of debate, as with any unknown thing about religion. So, like with all unknowns in religion, who knows? Coming in at number 2, we have The Bottle, a lost, unreleased one-shot manga from mangaka Hirohiko Araki, circa 1978. So, The Bottle is a lost one-shot manga, as stated, written and drawn by Hirohiko Araki in 1978. This is important as he would later go on to create the popular manga series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now, this lost piece, the Bottle, was actually his first job as a mangaka, and in the story, a character dressed in old Western-style outfits is featured. This was considered crude character design at the time. The work was intended to compete for the 14th Tezuka Award in the first issue of the magazine Weekly Shonen Jump. However, as it did not win the award and its content was never shown to the public. In the words of Hiroshi Motomiya, the judge of the contest at the time, no one is capable of being a freelance manga artist unless they have a story with originality. Of these, I'm interested in seeing an original story by the artist from The Bottle. Considering his age, it's safe to say that he's a very smart and promising newcomer. Now, it's not entirely known what the content of the story was. It's possible it could have been set in the Wild West and featured cowboys, as he has made several one-shots and characters that were Wild West themed or actual cowboys. However, the story, characters, and overall premise of the story is unknown, so that really can't be said for sure. It's possible that he owns the one-shot himself, or the people who held the contest have it. However, the status of the one-shot still remains unknown. The only thing available of this currently is this one illustration that's currently up on the screen, which, yeah, it's fairly crude, but, it's certainly better than anything I could ever draw. So, due to Araki losing the finals, no print or premise of the story exists other than the one illustration, and the fact that who owns it is unknown, and the fact that Araki has no way to be contacted by way of social media, it's quite possible this one will never be found. Hell, whoever decided, if the company if the submission company owns it and they didn't pick it, they might have thrown it out. This one I found very interesting because while I am not a fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I have often seen on these Lost Media videos, everyone's always looking for that Phantom Blood movie that just doesn't seem to exist outside of a few clips, but this author has other projects that are lost too, and so it's, let's give a spotlight to some of the lesser known stuff, which, whole point of this series. Coming in at number 3, we have the Action Game Master, a lost, unreleased video game system and line of games from 1993. So, Active Enterprises was a video game company located in Miami, active between 1989 and 1994, at which time they went out of business. The company infamously created the Action 52 and Cheetah Men 2, two games which were considered among the worst video games ever made, which if you've followed Lost Media and Hard to Find Media, you've definitely heard of them, especially Cheetah Men 2. Following the release of Action 52 on the Sega Genesis, Active Enterprises had plans to create a handheld video game console called the Action Game Master, named after a character from, of all things, Cheetah Men. Aside from having its own line of exclusive games, it would have full compatibility with the Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis games that could be played via separate adapters sold in stores. Other features would have included a 3.2-inch color LCD screen, a CD player, TV tuner, built-in battery charger, and a cigarette lighter adapter for cars. So it sounds like the Sega Nomad on steroids. Now, Active Enterprises made an appearance at the 1994 Consumer Electronics Show to present their future projects, including a third Cheetah Men game simply titled Cheetah Men 3, a Super Nintendo port of Action 52, and another game called Sports 5. None of these products were on display at the convention, however. It appears that the console had minimal work done on it beyond the concept, and there are no known prototypes of it or its line of games to this day. However, it can be assumed that the product would have been expensive, bulky, and a generally poor device with low battery time due to its energy consumption. I mean, yeah, just looking at this prototype mock-up image, each of these things would have taken a lot of power to generate. The screen was tiny. But based on if that's a whatever, what did they say it was? Sorry, let me look. Yeah, that's a 3.2-inch screen, which means that this controller would have been absolutely massive for a tiny screen. You would have had to have this thing plugged in like at all times. Like, I don't think this thing could have run on batteries. And you would have also had to have had all of these like very they probably would have been expensive if they would have been legal at all. The Sega adapter, the NES, Super NES adapter, the TV tuner adapter, the ability to play things off of a CD-ROM. Yeah, all of this, I mean, great idea and kind of a mix of stuff we have today, but I think it just was, at least in the 90s, was trying to do too much at once too early. And given the general shitty nature of their products, I don't think if this thing had seen the light of day, it would have been any good at all. While it's a neat idea, this one can stay lost. Alright guys, at number 4 we have Crash Bandicoot and Spyro Adventure World, Lost Online Games from 2004. So, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro Adventure World was a promotion with Nabisco in early 2004 on CandyStand.com, tied in with the Crash Bandicoot Purple, Ripto's Rampage, and Spyro Orange, the Cortex Conspiracy on the Game Boy Advance, in specially marked packages of Nabisco products. There'd be Crash Bandicoot or Spyro-themed cards, these cards containing codes that unlocked new minigames on the site. The promotion ended a year later in April of 2005, meaning the cards could no longer be redeemed and the games were no longer accessible. Not only has the game lost itself, but most of the code cards' designs are a complete mystery, with only 22 of the 90-plus cards recorded online. The exact number of cards is also unknown, as promotional material never gave a specific number, only stating that there were over 90. Certain lost games include Crash's Nitro Kart Rally, Crash's Rocket Mania, Smack-a-Dingo, Raygun Alley, Spyro's Flying Adventure, Blinky's Cavernous Crisis, and Hunter's Target Range. And, you know, that is ultimately the sad part about some of these online promotional games, like especially as a kid. You know, maybe you can't afford or your parents won't buy you the latest game, but they'll buy you a pack of cookies, and that cookies gets you a card, which is a collectible, and it has a code, and you can enter that in and go online and play that game, and you love playing that game, and then suddenly that game just isn't there anymore. It's weird to think in this day and age where we're told all the time, oh, you know, you put something on the internet, it's there forever, and then there's specifically us Lost Media fans know that there are things that were put on the internet that nobody can find anymore, so, kind of sad that statement isn't true in some cases. At number 5, we have Auto Trin, a partially found Estonian children's TV series circa 1993 to 1998. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I was watching another YouTuber's Lost Media content, and this was where I heard about this one. I do watch a lot of Lost Media. It's what inspired me to make this series. But the way he was talking about this show and the build-up and even the entry itself on his video made this thing sound more like it was an urban legend or a creepypasta than an actual piece of lost media, and I thought it was going to be some kind of like gotcha moment, and it's like, no, this never existed. But no, it did, and this is real. So let's get into it. Just letting you know, the trigger warning, this is considered NSFL due to its mentions of vehicular manslaughter, possession of underage pornography, and the abuse of minors. So Autotrin is a character created for Estonian TV station EVTV/RTV, later known as TV3, by Vino Lusar and Hendrik Masek, with Lusar being the one who mostly wears and is behind the Autotrin mascot. A woolly dinosaur from Misomasa land, Autotrin quickly became one of the most recognizable children's characters in Estonia during the 1990s. Now, I don't know much about the nation of Estonia, but this looks like this looks like the Barney that your mom hires when she can't afford Barney. This guy looks like a cheap Barney knockoff, but apparently was quite popular in Estonia, which again, I don't know what that says about Estonia. I know nothing about that country, no shade. Autotrin would appear at live events where he would hand out candy and hold contests. The mascot itself also appeared on many dairy products, produced 2 cassettes, and had its own brand of chocolate. And a bedtime radio show where he thinly veiled himself as Mrs. Secret. His 3rd birthday party at the Club Hollywood in Tallinn alone attracted more than 1,600 children, and in 1995, Lusar even took the character to the United States. I don't remember this, but I was also in like 2nd grade then. Despite his massive success, the original TV show in which he first appeared remains completely lost, aside from a few resurfaced footages, probably due to the fact that TV3 is a private, non-national channel with no archive to preserve its content. It's especially strange considering not only Autotrin's popularity, but also that the series ran for 5 years from 1993 to 1998. There are no known VHS releases of this show. So why is this kid show in the final slot of this video? Well, we kind of mentioned that earlier, but let's get into the specific reasons. So, the notorious events surrounding the production of the series may have also led to it being hidden away for years. After originally airing, 33-year-old producer Tonu Pavo was involved in a car accident in 1997, fatally killing 2 people, a 37-year-old mother and her 5-year-old daughter, with Pavo's family injured from the accident. His notorious public trial began in 1998 and may have been the catalyst on why the show was quietly discontinued, as it had caused a number of controversies and scandals around the producer. In addition, it was apparent and frequently gossiped about that the channel that the show aired on, TV3, erased the show's existence from their catalog because of the controversies the show was facing. And there were also the questionable actions of Vino Lusar. So, when he started after Autotrin, Lusar started a new child-oriented mascot show called Jolly Sajape. Translation, again this Jape, where he plays the sidekick of the titular mascot of the series called Chick. Unlike Autotrin, however, episodes of this show can be found and are available online. Lusar, after starring in multiple shows since Jolly Sajape, has cemented himself as a prominent figure as a child performer and entertainer in Estonia. But on December 20th of 2019, he found himself yet again at the forefront of controversy as the Estonian Northern District Attorney's Office accused Lusar of sexually abusing a 10-year-old girl. Not only that, but they had accused him of possession of child rhymes with schmornography. After an intensive search of Lusar's home and belongings by the Estonian police, they had found an illegally licensed gun and acquired an external hard drive from Lusar which contained 19 images and 4 videos of this questionable pornography dating back to May 6th of 2013 when the files were created. In the summer of 2021, Lusar stated the following: "For 26 years, I've been doing TV shows for kids, running kids' events and concerts, learning how to tune myself in with kids and doing it well. But I have no sexual interest in children, and my soul is pure." However, despite this statement, in December of that same year, he was found guilty and subsequently convicted in a 5-year sentence, 4 months in prison, and the rest of his sentence will be served on probation, so he is still currently on probation. As to the status of Otto Trin, it is unknown how many episodes were produced or exactly how the show was presented, but based on what little remains, it appears to have been a combination of human and / actor and costume shows similar to Sesame Street. Clips and episodes of the show were aired in 2016 when TV3 had celebrated their 20th anniversary, and it aired various old shows from the 90s, with Otto Trin being one of them. What appears to be a single, full-length, high-quality episode was uploaded to TV3's video portal in 2016 for the channel's 20th anniversary, but it does appear that this has been taken down. And as of November 2022, the only things remaining of the TV series are 2 receipts for the show from Pig Filet a la Autotrin and Autotrin Breakfast, and 2 short clips, one from a guessing game on the old TV3 shows for the channel's 20th anniversary, and another on TV3's 7th News from September 15th of 2016, which contains footage from the episode previously mentioned. So, it sounds like this was a very popular, much beloved show that, unfortunately, due to the bad actions of the people involved in making it, will likely never see the light of day again. While it could be possible that somebody recorded VHS tapes of it, nobody has really come forward, and this show may just be lost forever, which is always sad when something so popular simply vanishes without a trace. But in this case, there might be a good reason for that, especially when you factor in what might have been going on behind the scenes when this man of questionable morals, again, he was convicted, so I don't think I even have to say allegedly, was surrounded by so many children for so long. Alright, up first we have Saints Row 4, the lost build of a cancelled action-adventure game sequel. Now, I know that its most recent entry has not been great, and technically the spiritual sequel that came before that, Agents of Mayhem, also not great, but I really did love Saints Row 2 and Saints Row 3. Saints Row 4, the one we actually got, was kinda okay. I liked that they brought Johnny Gat back, but it was just a little bit too much, and then Gat Out of Hell was just terrible. But the original build of Saints Row Part 4, also known as Saints Row 4 Prime by the developers, was the original true sequel to Saints Row the Third that was going to be released on the PS3 and Xbox 360 before it was scrapped due to the financial troubles that Volition publisher THQ was going through. Wow, that's a tongue twister. So the version of Saints Row 4 that was released was an extended version of a planned DLC expansion for Saints Row the Third titled Enter the Dominatrix. So, original development for Saints Row Part 4 started a few months after Saints Row the Third and right after THQ entered into its struggling financial situation. The game would have been set in a brand new city yet again and would be a direct continuation of the events after Saints Row the Third. The plot would have revolved around Johnny Gat, who had been killed off in the last game. Again, the one thing I liked about the one we got of Saints Row 4 was they did bring back Gat, because he is my favorite. But Gat, who had been killed off in the last game, being brought back to life by being cloned. But the new clone of Johnny Gat would have been evil, and would have brought back history's most evil people, such as Genghis Khan, Cleopatra, and even Joseph Stalin. Was Cleopatra evil? I need to read a history book. These evil tyrants would have been the leaders of gangs who occupied territory in the new city for the players to take out, just like every Saints Row game before. The game would have also featured new mechanics such as a proper dedicated cover system, as well as a parkour system, which has been a feature that every Saints Row game tried to introduce. A fleshed-out weapon customization system with detachments also was planned. Notably, there were to be no superpowers featured in the game, unlike the final retail version of Saints Row 4. Saints Row Part 4 shares a lot of planned ideas that made it into the final version, such as a monster truck and a side-scrolling beat-em-up mission. So again, as stated before, the main reason it was cancelled was due to THQ wanting a game that would sell in order to keep the company afloat. THQ rejected the idea of Saints Row Part 4 and instead opted to turn an existing Saints Row project and turned that into Saints Row 4. So Volition turned an in-development DLC expansion pack titled Enter the Dominatrix, and quickly turned that into Saints Row 4. This new game, Saints Row 4, added new elements such as superpowers and more referential humor to sci-fi and pop culture. Another reason why Saints Row Part 4 was cancelled was due to the amount of work it was going to take to create a game whilst the next generation of consoles would be releasing around the same time. It would have been a bad decision financially to release a brand new game for outdated hardware. Not necessarily. I mean, we have seen companies have success with that before, but when your entire financial stability is riding on this one game, I get it. The final version of Saints Row 4 retains barely any of the story ideas or plot from Saints Row Part 4, and recycles a lot of assets from Saints Row the Third, which is expected as it is essentially a DLC pack turned into a full game. There are no current playable versions of any of these ideas besides assets left over in the E3 version of Saints Row the Third and pitch videos made for internal use only, which was shown in Volition's developer live streams. So I really wish that they had taken this idea, and when they redid Saints Row for the current gen, like I have it on the PS5, and it's okay. It's a little boring, a little generic. I wish they would have taken this idea, and that's what they would have finally made, because that sounds like a pretty cool idea. And I will admit that Saints Row 4 was when the series really started to go downhill, and now we can all kind of see why. At number 2, we have Knights of the Zodiac, a partially lost Deke English dub of the Saint Seiya anime series, 2003 to 2004. This entry has actually been suggested a lot, so I have been trying to incorporate more fan suggestions into this series, and that's where this one is from. Knights of the Zodiac is the international title for the Saint Seiya media franchise that was created by Masami Kurumada, debuting in the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump in 1986. The series later sprawled out to include multiple spin-offs, sequels, and anime adaptations. The first of which was produced by Toei Animation for 114 episodes on the TV Asahi network between 1986 and 1989. After achieving great success internationally in French, Portuguese, and Spanish-speaking markets, the original anime series was brought to English audiences in the early 2000s. One of those attempts included an edited dub produced by Deke Entertainment, which received only a partial home video release. Over the years, this dub has become infamous for its poor visual editing, primarily with the blood being recolored into something else other than red, questionable dialogue changes, with removing almost any mention of death in the series and replacing it with terms related to sleep being a notable example, and Stuart Stone's role as Cygnus Hoyoga, or Swan Hoyoga, in the Deke dub, being too out of character and sounding too similar to that of a stereotypical surfer boy. So of the 40 episodes that exist of this dub, only 28 have ever been released on DVD. However, 5 more volumes were planned, but were cancelled for unknown reasons, which resulted in the remaining 12 episodes becoming lost. Due to Deke Entertainment folding in 2008, this dub has long been out of circulation, and therefore it's extremely hard to come by, especially when compared to other dubs such as ADV and the Sentai Filmworks dubs, which are easily available online via torrents. While there are clips of the various episodes on YouTube, any full episodes that get uploaded are quickly taken down by Toei Animation. Of the missing 12 episodes since then that were not released on DVD, we have found episodes 31 and 32, but however they are in poor quality, and episode 30 is only partially found and also in poor quality. I've never seen this show. I know it's quite popular, but I do think it's kind of funny just how bad companies were at dubbing anime for America in like the 90s, the 80s, the 2000s, the early 2000s, and now just how much work goes into making sure anime dubs are quality. And it is kind of funny that there was a time when it was like anime was just this fringe thing that nobody really cared about, so they kind of just phoned it in. And in some cases, you get like ghost stories, which is great because they were just given free reign, and in other times you get something that people remember fondly from their childhoods, but looking back, it kind of sucks. At number 3, we have the lost reference photograph for the cover art of the first-person shooter game, Doom, circa 1993. So I don't really need to tell you what Doom is. It's only one of the most popular first-person shooters of all time that was originally released in December of 1993 for the MS-DOS. Hey, but I just told you anyway. That's the Mr. Sean difference. But, you know, one of the big aspects of the success of Doom for its commercial success was its cover art illustrated by Don Ivan Punchatz, which showcased the protagonist, named the Doom Guy, holding his own against relentless hordes of demons. In July of 2017, id Software co-founder, designer, and programmer, the infamous John Romero, revealed that the cover art's lead portion was based on a series of reference photographs featuring him as the Doom Guy. So by mid-1993, significant work was still being undertaken in the game's development. It used to take a lot less time to actually finish a game. While the artists Adrian Carmack and Kevin Cloud were busy working on the game's textures, the designer and programmer John Romero hired Punchatz to create the box art. To provide useful references for the cover's lead portion, he brought along a male body model to portray Doom Guy in a series of poses. Romero and other id employees assisted by constructing a prop plasma gun for the model to pose with, and explained they wanted him to depict the Marine firing down from a hill against an infinite horde of demons. For reasons unclear, the model opted to remove his shirt for the poses. Alas, despite the model's enthusiasm, the initial 10-minute photo shoot kind of proved underwhelming. Romero explained that the model's gun poses simply failed to produce the required cool factor. Despite frequently instructing the model on what he wanted for the cover, the model simply could not visually replicate it, and this frustrated Romero, who, you know, that seems to be a thing for him. So apparently Romero soon realized that if he couldn't verbally describe what he wanted, he could probably display it himself. So then he took his shirt off and replaced the model, altering the gun placement and proclaiming that, "This is what I'm talking about!" When it came to the proposed scene, Punchatz agreed, taking several photos in quick succession. While demoted, the model still fulfilled the critical role of a demon grabbing onto the Doom Guy. So after some gun placement changes and having the model grab Romero's leg and arms, Punchatz eventually settled on a photo showing the model grabbing Romero's right arm, deeming, with consensus reached, that it was the best pose. So soon he produced the famous cover art, and later also provided a Doom illustration for Electronic Gaming Monthly. So while Romero talked about this story in an interview in 2017, despite, providing extensive detail, he ultimately decided not to upload any photos from the shoot to either his website or on Twitter. While certain news websites have contacted Romero for the photographs, as of today, they remain publicly unavailable, and it is unclear whether Romero or id Software even still retain possession of these photographs. Nevertheless, if Romero does still have access, there's a good chance that we will see them someday, because he has also previously uploaded unseen art from the games. This included team photographs and Doom art in December of 2014 to mark the 21st anniversary of the game's release. So yeah, Romero is a bit of a controversial character, not so much for Doom. Everybody loves him for that, but things like Daikatana and all that. But it is clear that he does love his original creation, so he might just be waiting for another anniversary, and then we'll finally see these photos. And I think that's kind of cool, because, everybody knows the Doom cover, but I never really stopped to think that there might have actually been, photographs that were taken in order to make this image happen. So that's pretty cool. Number 4, we have the lost original Darth Vader audio from the I Am Your Father scene of Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. So, spoiler alert, if somehow you don't know the big reveal that was in Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5 of Star Wars, which is considered to be generally the best film of the original trilogy, where Darth Vader looks at Luke and says, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. And Luke goes, he told me enough. He told me you killed him. And Vader goes, no, I am your father. Basically one of the most iconic lines in cinema. However, they really wanted to keep this plot twist under wraps. So they actually filmed alternative audio in an effort to keep it from being revealed. So when they actually filmed this scene, that's not what was said, and that was later added in. So when Star Wars A New Hope came out, nobody thought it was going to be successful, but it was a huge hit. So 3 years later, the sequel, Empire Strikes Back, was coming out, and it was the subject of intense media and fan scrutiny. Rumors of a dramatic plot twist had begun to circulate well in advance of filming and the final scene, and the producers feared it leaking out to the public to the extent that they refused to divulge it even to the cast and crew until absolutely necessary. As part of this effort, the scripted reveal handed out to all was, "You don't know the truth. Obi-Wan killed your father." And that's the line the scene was filmed with an impressed Hamill duly reacting with shock and horror in full belief that it was the final version. This also incidentally explains a mild non sequitur in the finished scene when Luke screams, "That's impossible," which makes more sense to a reaction to the decoy reveal. It was only afterwards, privately, that Hamill was told by director Irvin Kershner that what the actual line would be. Since Vader's costume, as worn and performed on set by David Prowse, did not show lip movements, the final voiceover would, luckily enough, be recorded separately. It was a simple matter to swap out his line without reshooting the scene. Hamill did, however, still have to film the subsequent short scene of Luke hearing Darth Vader's Force call and responding "Father," hence the need to bring him into the loop. So only Hamill and then James Earl Jones, who voiced Darth Vader, they were the only two people who knew this of the cast, and they had to keep it hidden for 1.5 years prior to the film's premiere. According to Hamill, he at least was under stern warning from Lucas and Kershner, who pointed out that if the truth did leak ahead of time, he would be the prime suspect. I guess James Earl Jones was just considered too much of a professional to let that slip. Also, in 2017, when Hamill was doing an interview on the Graham Norton show as part of the promotional tour for Star Wars The Last Jedi, he revealed the original line, and the rest of the cast being completely surprised at the premiere, most notably Harrison Ford looking at him and going, "Hey kid, you didn't fucking tell me that." But so, if we know that this is what they originally recorded, surely that this line must be available to be heard on, one of George Lucas's special edition re-releases, must be in the Disney vault, it's gotta be, you can probably find this on YouTube, right? Well, no. The audio of the original line, either spoken by Prowse on set or recorded by Jones, is currently lost. It's rather surprising considering it's a key spot in Star Wars history. Given this, it is possible that the film/audio does still exist somewhere in Lucasfilm/Disney's vaults, waiting for the right moment to be released. Meanwhile, there are a few rather crude recreations floating about online, so if you think you've seen this scene with the original audio, you haven't. That's someone else making it themselves and putting it up on YouTube. Alright guys, for our final entry in this video, we have Medical Island, a partially found English dub of a Korean comedy horror web cartoon circa 2006. Medical Island is a South Korean American online comedy horror animated series produced by Margaret Dean, Michael Polis, and Studio Animal. This show used primarily flash animation, but would also make use of CGI. All of its 18 episodes are shorts, and according to Studio Animal's websites, episodes 1 through 8 were released in 2003, episodes 9 through 18 were released in 2005. Episodes 1 through 8 and 18 don't have dialogue, while episodes 9 through 17 do. So, the premise of the show is that it is set in a prison-like island medical facility controlled by Dr. Franken. The facility captures people and modifies them with experiments that alter their bodies. The facility is staffed by a legion of cloned nurses, specialists, and zombies. Many patients try to escape the island and/or attack the staff of Medical Island. It is unsuitable to minors due to its haunting scenes and depiction of gore and male genitalia. So, most times you don't even want to look at a dick, but when you're told you can't look at that dick with an English dub, suddenly that's lost media, and that's a dick you want to see and English words you want to hear, I suppose. So, Warner Bros. Online acquired the distribution rights to the show. In May of 2006, it was reported that they made a deal with 180 Solutions to release the show on the controversial adware website Zango.com. viewers had to install Zango's ad software before they could view the show. By the end of July, Warner Bros. Pulled its content from Zango due to lack of a third-party certification on Zango's business practices that did not meet Warner Bros. Standards. By March of 2009, the show was viewable on Crackle.com. It was nominated for MIPCOM's 2006 mobile TV screenings and awards for the Best Original Made-for-Mobile Film or Video Content category. And the complete series in its Korean dub was uploaded to YouTube by Studio Animal, and while it is still mentioned on Sony Crackle, none of the episodes can play anymore. The YouTube user Are You Taken Fool did upload the English dubs of episodes 9, 10, and 17, all of which have the Crackle watermark. Episode 16 is available on Metatube, and summaries of all episodes on Zango have been preserved on the Internet Archive. 2006 was a crazy time for the internet and video content. 2006 is actually when I graduated high school, got my first laptop, like personal laptop, the first time I ever had unfettered access to the internet without my parents looking over my shoulder. Yes, I grew up in a kind of sheltered household, so to speak. But there are a ton of things here like this where companies were trying to figure out, okay, how do we use the internet to make money on videos? Little short videos, questionable quality. You also, how do we make money off of it? What are the guidelines? You know, we're not getting the censorship like we do if we want to put something on TV. You couldn't have shown male genitals on Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, or even MTV, but hey, the internet, everything's fair game. So you had a lot of stuff like this, and unfortunately, because people didn't really quite know what they were doing, if it was going to be successful, or if anyone would care, you know, almost 20 years from then, there were not as many efforts made to preserve all of it. A lot of early internet stuff, and we're talking even in the 90s to the early 2000s, has not been preserved nearly the way that it should, and that's why you're going to see a lot of instances of it on this show and on other lost media shows. And you know, if you were fortunate enough to have grabbed these videos because you were a savvy little internet sleuth back in the day, great time to upload them. Let people know that these things are still out there. And again, that's why I like to showcase the lesser known stuff, because while everybody is still trying desperately to find Smash Fest, so they can watch people in Nintendo mascot suits wail on each other, we could probably be finding all kinds of stuff that people just didn't know anybody was looking for it. At number 1, we have Eternal Darkness, the lost build of the finished Nintendo 64 survival horror game circa 1998 to 2000. Nintendo is certainly known for its proprietary properties, mainly characters and games you will not find on other systems. And while not nearly as popular as some of Nintendo's other proprietary titles, Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, which is a Nintendo game for the Nintendo GameCube that was released on June 24, 2002, has become a bit of a cult hit. However, it was originally developed as an N64 game in 1999. The story was to follow the return of the Ancients, a tribe that existed before humanity on their hunt to claim Earth. 13 people from different times periods all unite in order to destroy the Ancients once and for all and save the Earth. The game was in the final stages of development before it was scrapped on November 29th of 2000 in favor of remaking the game for the newly released Nintendo GameCube. Eternal Darkness was during development the first Nintendo 64 game that ran at 640 by 480 resolution without the use of the RAM expansion pack, but using it was optional. The only thing that would happen was additional effects. It was reportedly so unbelievable that Nintendo inspected the development kit that the game was running on just to make sure the expansion pack wasn't installed. A new cartridge was developed with a capacity of 256 megabits, and this was done because it was required just to support all of the voice lines, which were recorded in Dolby Surround Sound. Now, some of the differences between the N64 version and the one we got on the GameCube, the character of Michael Edwards was going to be a Gulf War commando, but after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, he was changed to be a firefighter instead. Sanity effects were also meant to play along throughout an entire level until the player managed to increase their sanity high enough again. The game was also meant to be 60 to 80 hours long and would have ended in many different ways, unlike the GameCube release, which would take about 7 hours with only 2 endings. This counts the special ending after beating the game 3 times. Most of the endings made one of the 4 ancients, the bosses in Eternal Darkness, take over Earth. The camera was also a lot stiffer in the N64 version and featured less cinematic camera movements from going one place to the other. Another big difference was the character of Joseph de Molay. Now, Joseph was a major character who was a Templar Knight. However, he only made a small cameo in the GameCube version during the end of Roberto's chapter, and when Rovus gets the 8th chapter. De Molay would have roamed around a castle and was a lot faster than most of the other characters in the game. He was even featured in the 1999 E3 demo of the game. De Molay did eventually get redesigned. His chapter was switched from being set in a castle to the Forbidden City, and he became quite slower than other characters. This character's fate is ultimately unknown. Dennis Diak, the game's director, stated the reason for his departure was because that Joseph was only meant to be seen in E3 demos. This begs the question of why the character was redesigned for the Nintendo 64. In contrast, one of the game's artists stated the reason for his departure was because of 9/11. Now, I have never played Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, but I have sat and watched one of my buddies play it back in the day, and it was a pretty impressive game, and it sounds like the N64 version was almost going to be even more impressive. So, who knows? Maybe if this game had actually gotten released in its original version, it might have become, a major hit with many sequels, as opposed to the kind of underground, fondly remembered cult hit that it is today. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the version that we got, but it sounds like we could have gotten so much more. At number 2, we have The Television Ghost, a lost early television series circa 1931 to 1933. The Television Ghost was a very early television program broadcast on W2XAB, New York City, an experimental branch of the Columbia Broadcasting System and the predecessor of the current WCBS TV affiliate. In the early 1930s, premiering on August 17, 1931, it was often considered to be the first dramatic television anthology ever made, but no known footage is known to have survived. The show centered around the idea of ghosts telling the stories of how they were murdered. Each episode featured a different story, but the ghost was always played by George Kelton, whose costume involved having his face painted white and a sheet wrapped around him. Due to the technical limitations of the time, the format was closer to that of a radio show, as the video footage only consisted of a continuous shot of Kelting's head and shoulders as he talked. Each broadcast lasted 15 minutes. The series ran for 2 years until it was finalized in 1933, presumably at the same time the W2XAB station suspended operations due to economic turmoil from the Great Depression. Now, given the early nature of television technology, the series had to be broadcast live and was not able to be recorded by the network. In addition, the few people who even owned a television receiver at the time found that the screen was so dim it was barely visible to the naked eye, let alone a film recording. Because of this, the series is unanimously considered to be lost for good, with no chance of it ever resurfacing. The series was also broadcast via radio on W2XE New York City and WABC New York, but no audio recordings have surfaced either, as this was also before radio broadcasts started being regularly preserved. The only elements of the series that exist are a few photographs and a couple of newspaper mentions from the time. This one, I think ultimately it's not going to be found, so that's not the point of me including it here, but I think that it is very interesting that even in the earliest days of television, it was used, there was horror. Horror has always been such a big part of the entertainment industry, and it's interesting that this, one of the pioneering early experimental television programs was literally just a guy dressed up as a ghost telling horror stories. And I just think that's pretty cool, personally. At number 3, we have Dracula, specifically the partially found epilogue scene of the 1931 Universal horror film. Now, Universal's Dracula, classic, you probably already know about it, is a 1931 horror film loosely based on the 1924 play of the same name directed by Todd Browning and Carl Freund, starring Bela Lugosi as Dracula and Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing. The film is seen as a classic by many and is often regarded as the film that made Dracula a popular icon. The initial theatrical run of the film featured an epilogue by Sloan, similar to the prologue he did in Frankenstein, where he directly spoke to the audience. He is known to have said, "Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. A word before you go. We hope the memories of Dracula and Renfield won't give you bad dreams. So just a word of reassurance. When you get home tonight, and the lights have been turned out, and you are afraid to look behind the curtains, and you dread to see a face appear at the window, why, just pull yourself together and remember that, after all, there are such things as vampires." Now, when Dracula was reissued in 1936, the Motion Picture Code, which worked to censor films in order to keep certain morals, was being taken very seriously. As such, the epilogue was removed to avoid contention from religious groups. The epilogue was never restored for any of the future releases. Now, a few stills and a brief clip of the epilogue are featured in the 1999 documentary Road to Dracula. In September of 2021, David J. Skal, the director of Road to Dracula, and noted writer and historian known for his work in the horror genre, was contacted by the Loose Leaf Celluloid podcast and asked about the state of the footage. According to Skal, Universal acquired the only known copy of the sequence from the British Film Institute by the late 90s. As it features severely raggedy jump cuts and is missing portions of the soundtrack, Universal's quality control people deemed it unusable and refused to let it be used in its entirety. So he came up with the solution, and in his documentary, he also stated that a restoration is possible, though he doubts one is likely due to costs. I think this one is especially interesting considering all of the work that has been done to make sure that we have all the pieces of the old MGM horror classics. I mean, the Phantom of the Opera alone has so many different cuts out there, and, especially the actor who played Van Helsing, he has the very famous scene at the beginning of Frankenstein, yet somehow, simply, I guess, the only thing I can think of that religious groups would take offense with this movie is that he said there are such things as vampires, and a lot of religious groups don't like to believe that anything of the supernatural exists, which I think is kind of funny, considering they say that, they go by the Bible, and ghosts literally show up in the Old Testament, so I don't understand why they don't believe in the supernatural when their own holy book says it's real. But anyway, this does exist, and apparently it could be restored, and I think that's weird that even though it's expensive, just the state of MGM's, how famous their monster movies are, how they really wanted to make a, expanded MGM monsterverse that didn't get off the ground, not that long ago. I think it's weird that they wouldn't take efforts to preserve and restore this and make it available to the Republic. To the Republic, what is it, Star Wars? To the public. At number 4, we have Little Shop, a partially lost Fox Kids animated series based on the horror comedy film Little Shop of Horror, circa 1991. Little Shop was a French animated television series that aired on Fox and La Cinq, a now defunct French television network, in 1991, inspired by the original 1960 film Little Shop of Horrors and the 1982 off-Broadway musical and the 1986 musical film adaptation of the same name. The plot follows Seymour Krelborn, an adolescent, a self-proclaimed nerd who works in a little flower shop owned by Mr. Mushnick. His daughter, Audrey, is the love of Seymour's life, yet she doesn't seem to notice or even understand his affection. Also, there's a bully named Payne Driller who constantly targets Seymour in his bullying. Seymour has a pet flytrap named Junior. Junior was once a 200 million year old seed until Seymour found him in a junkyard. Once he was cared for by Seymour, he sprouted into a Venus flytrap that raps and talks in a hip-hop dialect. Unlike the films and the musical, where Junior, they're named Audrey too, is an antagonist who forces Seymour to commit murders to satisfy his hunger for human blood. No, in the TV series, Junior is a protagonist that sides with Seymour. The horror elements that were in the previous musical and films were cut in favor for a more child-friendly tone. While the credit for the concept for this adaptation is given to Ellen Levy and Mark Edward Edens, the show was created by Gene Chalpin, best known as the founder of Deke Entertainment and the co-creator of Inspector Gadget, and was produced by animator Tom Tataranowicz, who first did the animation for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and producer Haim Saban, who would later go on to create Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The music for the series was written by Haim Saban and Shuki Levy. The series stars Jane Alexa as Seymour Krelborn, Ginny Kwan as Audrey Mushnick, Michael Rahl as Mr. Mushnick, Terry McGee as Audrey Jr., and Mark Ryan Martin as Payne Driller. Lisa Paulette is credited as Seymour's singing voice. Roger Corman, the writer and director of the original 1960 film, is also credited as a creative consultant for the series. Now, as to its availability, Little Shop first ran for only 13 half-hour episodes from September 7th to November 30th of 1991. It was rerun until September 5th of 1992, and it was later on the Sci-Fi Channel as part of Cartoon Quest and the Animation Station block until 1997. In January of 2015, only 3 episodes of the show, the pilot episode titled Beth's Bad Seed, the fourth episode, Unfair Science, and the 6th episode, I Loathe a Parade, were known to be publicly available due to VHS recordings that were subsequently uploaded to YouTube. More recently, in December of 2016, 3 additional episodes, the second one, Real Men Aren't Made of Quiche, and the 3rd episode, Back to the Fuchsia, as well as the 5th, Stage Blight, were uploaded by the Little Shop Archive YouTube account. This was closely followed on January 1st of 2017 by an entirety of Air Jr. and the 8th episode, Untitled Halloween Story. The remaining episodes were uploaded on January 2nd, 2017. The only episode that was not uploaded was the English version of It's a Wonderful Leaf, as the DVD copy given to the Little Shop Archive YouTube account was damaged. A mere upload of the German dub of this episode was uploaded in its place. I think this one is interesting for quite a few reasons. One being that I would never think to adapt Little Shop of Horrors into a children's cartoon, but you know, that was the 90s for you. And second, the fact that this one is almost completely found. There's only one episode missing, and that's just the English version of episode 9. So if you happen to have a VHS tape somewhere that features the English version of episode 9, It's a Wonderful Leaf, get that thing uploaded to the archive, to the internet. We almost have this one completely found. At number 5, we have the New York Centerfold Massacre, a partially lost horror film from 1985. The New York Centerfold Massacre is a film where pornographic centerfold models in New York are being slaughtered by an overprotective Christian mother with a potato sack over her head. Her methods contain chugging acid down their throats, knocking them out with a tripod, and shining lights at their faces. The police are investigating to find the one responsible for these grisly murders. This movie never saw a theatrical release, nor was it ever sold in stores. The only way to obtain a copy was through an exclusive mail ordering services ran by Macabre Video Underground. Due to errors both on set and in the final cut, large portions of the film were deleted, while the remainder were lost during a fire. About half of the footage of the New York Centerfold Massacre has never been released, as it was accidentally deleted from the final cut. In an interview with the director Lou Ferroli, in regards to deleted footage, he stated, "The best footage of NYCM was lost not in the fire, but on the set as a crew member put in a recorded shoot tape as a blank, and so the best slasher scenes in a couple of great buxomy models were erased. And these models really were centerfolds. I couldn't afford to bring them back for another shooting day." All of the master copies of the New York Centerfold Massacre were destroyed when a warehouse that stored the master copies caught fire. As of now, new webcam footage was spliced in the first few minutes of the movie to try and recuperate some of what there was, but most of this film is just gone. Now, if you go to the Lost Media Wiki, you can actually see the footage that is available of this film, and it is bad. Like, I took a quick look. It's terrible. But, there definitely is a market for these things where, if something's so bad it's good, but this literally looks like someone was shooting a 1980s home movie rather than, I've seen low-budget films from the 60s that are better quality than this thing. And unfortunately, half of the footage that was lost, it was literally recorded over with no backups, and they couldn't reshoot it, so there's literally zero chance it will ever be found. But I really, just looking at this film, I think that should have been their cue. Just stop right there rather than keep making it. Alright guys, for the first one today, I'm playing a little fast and loose with the rules of what counts as lost media, but at number 1, we have Gozu, aka Cowhead, a lost Japanese horror story of undetermined origin. Now, if you're at all a fan of Japanese urban legends, you might be saying, Mr. Sean, Gozu, aka Cowhead, or possibly also known as Oxhead, is not actually a piece of lost media, but rather it is a urban legend, and maybe. So as this urban legend goes, supposedly the Cowhead story is so horrifying that people who read or hear it are overcome with fear so great that they tremble violently for days on end until they die. The full story has supposedly been broken up into fragments that when read individually are not lethal, but still terrify and bring great pain and suffering upon those who read or listen to their words. Gozu was sometimes rumored to be an unpublished piece written by famous science fiction author Sakyo Komatsu, but there is no evidence to link the author to the legend. So why am I saying that this urban legend is lost media? Well, maybe the myth itself might be false, but I believe in every story there is a grain of truth. So somewhere at some time, most likely in Japan, somebody told an exceptionally scary story about something involving a cow head. And, people probably who heard this story would tell other people about the story, and its legend grew to the point where we have this mythic urban legend about a story so scary that it would scare you to death. But ultimately, I believe that somewhere there exists a story that has been lost to time on which this legend was created. At number 2, we have the Iki Ningyo broadcast, a lost Japanese news broadcast featuring a cursed doll. So, to start off, the Iki Ningyo is a doll supposedly presented to actor, screenwriter, and professional horror storyteller Junji Inagawa when he started working on a particular play. Now, this play involved a doll as a central prop that resembled more or less a ghost of a little girl that Junji had claimed to have seen previously. Now, apparently from the moment that he received this doll, the lives of the people working on the play would become quite hectic. The artisan who made the doll vanish, the scriptwriter's house burned down, and the cousin of the puppeteer in charge died suddenly. Accidents happened during rehearsals, which not only affected props but also the crew, with a few people actually getting hurt. Curiously, most of the wounds affecting them occurred on the right hand and right knee, which were also parts of the doll that would constantly become damaged without explanation. And apparently, after becoming concerned about the well-being of his crew, Inagawa took the doll to different temples and shrines, and eventually she would be put in a coffin and things seemed to improve. The play went on, and it seemed that everything would be okay. Shockingly, Inagawa's father died all of a sudden the next day after the play. Also, the puppeteer, Mr. Maino, took the doll home after the play was over, and it is said that his mental health declined considerably during this time. Now, all of this could be true, could be not. It's not known exactly what play this was. The story, Mr. Imagawa was always very hush-hush about it. But here comes to the piece of lost media. In 1979, a TV station that knew about the doll invited Inagawa and Mr. Mino for an interview, and that's where things got weird. During the episode, things started to happen like lights falling and tech failures. Crew members and the audience started to feel uneasy, and Mino talked to the doll as if she was a real person. To this day, this specific episode cannot be found, and it is considered lost media. There are also reports that at some point lights and various parts of the stage started to come crashing down, and it sounds like if this was a real thing, that it would have been better documented. But here's the thing, we do have screenshots that are supposedly from the episode, though the episode itself is lost. So it does seem like whatever the truth of the legends are, there was an episode of a Japanese news program in 1979 where they interviewed both Inagawa and the puppeteer while the doll was present. But anything more about people supposedly seeing ghosts or catastrophes on set, well, if we could find the episode, that would basically put all of this to rest one way or the other. Now, at the time, of course, VHS recording did exist, but most people did not have ready access to it. So the idea that this episode is on some Japanese person's either VHS or Betamax collection, very slim, but it could be. So maybe someday we will see it, and then we'll know the truth. At number 3, we have Memories of Earth, a lost, unaired episode of the Japanese horror TV series The Damned Files, circa 2004. The Damned Files is a Japanese horror TV series of 30 episodes over 3 seasons that aired in 2003. The series was produced by the Nagoya Broadcasting Network, NBN, and is set in Nagoya, and the episodes are based on actual haunted places and ghost stories that exist in Aichi. In addition, the series was aired in syndication on the TV Asahi affiliate stations in the various prefectures to which NBN belongs. A 90-minute special episode aired on October 17, 2003, and was screened as a film under the title The Tunnel at the Cannes Film Festival and Stockholm International Film Festival in 2004. Now, of this series, only one episode is apparently missing. The unaired episode in the series is titled Memories of Earth, or Chiku no Omoide. Has an unknown plot and details are only partially known. Shinji Aoyama is in charge of directing, and he mentioned on his blog that the episode would be completed by the end of April 2004. The film was then shown at a preview screening held at the Imagica in Gotanda, Tokyo. Shingo Tsurumi plays the lead role and is listed in the list of films in which he has appeared. Currently, no screenshots have ever been found, let alone a full-length version of the episode. As for other details of the episode, rumors exist that the story is about a man who survived on Earth, and it is in the science fiction genre. I always find these lost horror TV episodes, like there was one episode so scary that we couldn't air it, really interesting, because ultimately the reason it was never aired is always likely something far more mundane, like TV schedule issues or something like that. But because it's horror themed, because it's never been released on like home media or anything, and because so little of it exists, it just leads the people to wonder, like, what the hell is it with this video that it can't be shown? And while I'm always someone who wishes that lost media will become found, I feel like in some cases like this one, finding it would be nothing but a disappointment, because then we'd have the reality, and the reality would probably be very mundane. Alright guys, coming in at number 4, we have Ghosts at School, a partially found alternate English dub of the anime series Ghost Stories from 2006. Now, in a previous episode, I talked about the Lost Ghosts at School Ghost Stories episode about Kuchisake Onna, and I talked a little bit about the English dub of the series. So originally, Ghosts at School was an animated adaptation of the Toru Tsunemitsu's novel series of the same name, produced by Studio Pierrot, and the anime ran for 20 episodes between October 2000 and March of 2001 on Fuji TV in Japan, with again one missing episode about Kuchisake Onna that was removed before it could even air because the station thought that children with hair lips might be offended by the episode. However, there is a well-known English version released under the name Ghost Stories by the Houston-based ADV Films between October 2005 and June of 2006. This dub became infamous due to a creative decision that had the crew entirely rewrite the show's script to include vulgar humor. It's amazing. I highly recommend you watch it. However, there was another English dub and was produced exclusively for the Southeast Asian market. Recorded in Hong Kong by Red Angel Media, this dub was faithful to the Japanese script and premiered on Animax Asia in early 2006. It starred Andrea Kwan, Candice Moore, Claudia Thompson, Russell Waite, Sarah Hauser, and Rick Thomas. This version of the show has no known home media releases. Episodes 5 through 9 have surfaced online, though the audio has been placed over the visuals of ADV's dub. And this one is definitely similar to a lot of other lost English dubs of animes that they are likely lost because they just weren't good. That's not to say that the cast did not do a good job, it's just that the source material was pretty forgettable. Like, I have watched Ghost Stories, both the English dub, which is phenomenal, and I have watched the original Japanese Ghosts of School with subtitles, and in all honesty, the original content kinda sucks. It's a very bland, run-of-the-mill supernatural anime that is entirely forgettable. ADV was right to give their actors full reign to do whatever crude, dirty pop culture jokes they wanted to, because it ultimately made the series worth remembering. So while again, I'm sure fans of this series would love to have another version that's faithful to the source material, and I do hope we find it one day, I do feel like it will just, if they ever were to release this on VHS or DVD, I guess now, it would just sit on your shelf and you just watch the ADV version because it's better. Alright guys, for this final piece, I kind of had to wrestle with whether or not I consider this a lesser known piece of lost media, as I have seen it on several videos, but I ultimately decided that it counts and belongs here because there are similar pieces of lost media that are much more well known, and that is of course the Renee Hartevelt death footage recorded by Issei Sagawa, aka the Japanese killer, who recorded his act of cannibalistic murder on this woman in 1981. In the summer of 1981, Issei Sagawa, a Japanese student studying abroad in France, invited Renee Hartevelt, a classmate, to his apartment for dinner and to study poetry. What culminated was Sagawa's intention to kill and consume Hartevelt's flesh. While he was reading a Johannes Roberts Becker poem about death, he shot her with a rifle. Using an electric knife, he started taking more than 7 kilos of meat off of her body. He consumed her flesh during the next 3 days, cooking several meals and having sex with her corpse before finally getting rid of the body. In addition, he recorded the entirety of the butchery. Her last words and the actual firing of the shot were also caught on tape, and Sagawa shot a total of 39 photographs showing several stagings he made with the corpse. Trying to make Hartevelt's body disappear, Sagawa eventually committed a mistake by losing one of his suitcases containing her body parts in a public garden. The police later found that the owner of the suitcase and arrested him, and he was known as the Japanese cannibal by the newspapers. The rest of Harteveldt's body, the rifle, and the butchery photos, as well as the tape recorder and several other pieces of evidence were found in his apartment. The saddest part is that rather than going to prison, he was sent to a mental institution, and then when he got out, he became a celebrity food critic in Japan. Now, these tapes are presumed to be in the possession of the French police. They are unlikely to ever surface for obvious reasons. Now, while I believe Mr. Sagawa died of COVID during the pandemic, I think it is insane. Be that, one, I can understand how he got off with a slap on the wrist because apparently his father is very rich and well connected and was able to get his son out of the trouble. But the thing that amazes me is that knowing what he did, this man was welcomed as a celebrity, and being known as a cannibal, why the hell would you want this man to be a food critic? I feel like giving this man celebrity status and having him write articles and make television appearances is incredibly disrespectful to the memory of Ms. Harteveldt, who the only thing she did wrong was befriend the wrong classmate who turned out to be a complete sicko and psychopath. And as it stands, I'm glad this man's dead. I wish that he had gone to prison, and I wish that he had met a similar fate to, say, our own American Milwaukee cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer, because I think it's absolutely disgusting that this man was, was only made to be in a psych ward and then welcomed back to his home country with open arms as a morbid curiosity celebrity figure. Absolutely disgraceful. And that's going to do it for part 4, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the marathon thus far. Part 5 is next.